to order the Beverly Hills Regular Village Council meeting for Tuesday, May 15, 2018. Ms. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Aboud?
Here.
Mr. Delaney?
Here.
Mr. Mooney?
Here.
Mr. Mueller?
Here.
Mr. Nunez?
Here.
Mr. Owen? Ms. Petty? We have a quorum.
Thank you. With the suggestion of quorum, we all please rise with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Let's move on. Are there amendments to the agenda from my right, from my left? I'll entertain a motion to amend the business agenda, add item 12, which is to authorize the administration to enter into the intergovernmental contract with the city of Southfield and between the city of Southfield and the Village of Beverly Hills regarding the collection of delinquent water accounts. So moved. Is there support? Support. Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Further discussion? Hearing none, there's been a motion to amend the agenda. It has been supported. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. Further amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended. So moved. Thank you. Is there support? Support. Support by Mr. Aboud. Further discussion? Hearing none, there's been a motion. It's been supported. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed signify by saying nay. That motion carries unanimously. We'll move on. Are there any community announcements? Anyone in the audience wish to make a community announcement? Hearing none. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the public hearing to review the 2017 assessment rolls for dust control and other miscellaneous assessments. Those are assessments to make certain that those few dirt roads that we have are taken care of, and a few other special assessments as set forth in the consent agenda. At this time, I'll open the public hearing at 7:32. Anybody like to be heard on this? All right, I will close the public hearing on the review of the 2017 assessment rolls for dust control and other miscellaneous assessments. All right, let's move on to public comments on items not on the published agenda. Would anyone in the audience like to be heard? Mr. Taylor. Identify yourself, Mr. Taylor. Go ahead.
Yes, my name's Alan Taylor. I am the attorney for Georgia Lee Breen, who resides at 18569 Riverside. I'm also the attorney for Paul and Beverly Thomas. They reside at 18851 Riverside. All three of them are here for the public hearing today. What I am passing out now is two items. One is a letter that was emailed to all of the council members, as well as Mr. Wilson and specific individuals associated with the engineering department, Mr. Mesler, as well as Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Shepler from Hubble, Roth, and Clark. I sent it on May 11th as a prelude to my presentation here today. I hope you've all had a chance to review it. If you have not, I provided you with a courtesy copy. The second attachment is just some pictures that depict my clients' backyards over the last weekend when there was a lot of flooding. I'll get into that very briefly. This council may recall, I was here in March, and I was here on behalf of just Mrs. Breen at that point in time as a result of the construction of the Bigfoot house at 18828 Hillcrest. Since then, as the problems have impacted not only Mrs. Breen, but also her neighbors, Paul and Beverly Thomas, who again are here today, They've joined forces. They really need this council to take this request seriously. As you can see in the pictures.
Excuse me just a moment, Mr.
Sure.
Taylor. Mike, we're not getting a video feed per some contacts I received. Can you look into that, please? Go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Mr. Meany.
I wouldn't want you to miss any video time.
I watch myself as soon as I get home. That was a joke.
They
Don't
have-
count on me getting this money. Let's move this along.
They have medication for that, Mr. Taylor.
As I was mentioning, the pictures show the two lots from this weekend. It's the exact same. You could have picked a picture from March of 2018 that I showed when I was here last time. You could have picked the pictures from January, February, March, or April of 2017. They all look the same. There's a quagmire, essentially, that's pooling in the back of my clients' yards as a result of a house that was constructed at 18828 Hillcrest, pursuant to the admission of Mr. Ryan when he was speaking in good faith with me, 3 feet above the allowable grade. And I would mention to you what one of my clients, Beverly Thomas, told me earlier today, which is that back in May of 2017, this council worked with Hubble, Roth, and Clark, and specifically Mr. Shepler, and he imposed a plan on Mr. Jensen to try and fix the drainage problem. It was put in place in May. I've called it the Band-Aid drainage system. The reason I called it that is because it didn't do anything. You can see the pictures now. They're the same as they were in 2017. And as Mrs. Thomas said, and it's a very astute observation, if the Village of Beverly Hills was willing to get involved in 2017 to put a drainage system in via Hubble, Roth, and Clark that was specifically negotiated with Mr. Jensen that he agreed to put in, but it didn't work, why would the Village of Beverly Hills not take the same steps to protect Mr. and Mrs. Thomas and to protect Mr. and Mrs. Breen today, because their property's in the same situation? It cannot be overemphasized. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas and Mrs. Breen have lived in their houses as neighbors at 18551 Riverside and 18569 Riverside for over 40 years. They're not people who moved in 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. They've each lived there as neighbors for over 40 years. They never, and I don't know how much clearer I can make that, never had any problems with any water in their backyard prior to January of 2017 when Hillcrest was built. The cause and effect is rhetorical. Hillcrest was built by David Jensen. I am here asking for assistance of the Village of Beverly Hills Council because the Village of Beverly Hills Council is the ordinance group, enforcement group, the one who's supposed to make sure that Bigfoot houses aren't built above the allowable grade, causing all these flooding problems on innocent neighbors, especially those that are, in all candor, elderly and unable to solve the problems on their own. I provided the pictures of this weekend to again reiterate that this problem is still going on. My clients have decided that they need to take action. And by taking action, they have provided you with a quote. And I attached it to the letter that I sent on May 11th. I provided it to you again today. The quote is from Waterworks, which is located in Ferndale, to do a new drain plan, essentially between their lots. That they are willing to go ahead and spend the necessary money to fix the problem on their own because this problem needs to be solved. I can only say it so many times. This weekend, both the Breens, or both the Mrs. Breen and the Thomases had water come into their house. This problem is so bad that they are prepared to take the next step. What are they asking this council for? What they're asking for is a contribution, money. As I said earlier, last time there was an issue with this house, a full-blown Band-Aid, albeit drain plan, but a drain plan was put in. Mr. Jensen had to do it. Hubble, Roth, Clark authorized it. It didn't work. Why should that not occur again? If we know the problem is still there, why would the council not say, and I'm requesting that they do this, why would the council not say to Hubble, Roth, and Clark, and Mr. Jensen, your fix didn't work. Look at the pictures. It didn't work. You need a different drain plan, one that'll work. If that's not possible, then my clients have gotten a quote, $33,000. It's expensive. It's a big project. In addition to the $33,000 cost, there's also at least $10,000 in cost to reestablish their yard after the work's been done, because to create this drainage system, the yards are going to be torn apart. Commonsensical, they're going to be torn apart. They're going to need to be put back together. It's at least $10,000. So you're looking at over $50,000 to get this done. Assuming the Village of Beverly Hills does not contribute, which is why I'm here today, to ask for financial assistance, because my client should not have to bear the burden of a problem that Hubble, Roth, and Clark tried to fix, didn't, Mr. Jensen tried to fix, didn't, and the Village of Beverly Hills was overseeing and blessing. We know it didn't work. We're asking for the Village of Beverly Hills Council to make a financial contribution, hopefully to pay for all of it. But if not to make a financial contribution, a meaningful financial contribution to defray the costs from some innocent homeowners who have been plagued with flooding since January of 2017. Regardless of the willingness to financially contribute, which is of paramount importance to my clients, obviously. Obviously, they're retired, living on fixed incomes, is that the Village of Beverly Hills work with them to put this plan in place. My clients have run into roadblocks with the engineering department, with Mr. Mesler's department, with Hubble, Roth, and Clark. There are permits that are necessary, there are fees that are necessary, there are applications that are necessary. All of those administrative items need to be handled. So regardless of the Village of Beverly Hills' willingness to contribute or willing to seek further help from Mr. Jensen or Hubble, Roth, and Clark on its own, I would like to leave here with a assurance, either from yourself, Mr. Mooney, or from Mr. Wilson as the manager, that if Waterworks calls to try to work out some way to do this work, that they will be met with a responsive municipality that is willing to work with them in conjunction with what needs to be done to get the project approved, because you're talking about tapping into sewer lines, you're talking about putting in catch basins, you're talking about using other catch basins. This is a major flooding problem, so it requires a major fix, and that major fix will require administrative assistance from the Village of Beverly Hills. I am requesting either now or after the meeting, or you can communicate with me via email, you have my email address, that someone let me know who on the administrative side we should contact to start pushing this program forward. With that, I thank the council again and Mr. Mooney for hearing me out. On behalf of my clients, we really do appreciate the opportunity to speak and to let our grievances be known, and we are certainly hoping, there's a Freudian slip, we're certainly hoping that you will be able to help out Mrs. Breen and Paul and Beverly Thomas, as they certainly deserve the help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Anyone else wish to make a comment not on items not on the published agenda? Ms. Nagel. Full name and street. That's all, Ms. Nagel.
Cynthia Nagel, Kirkshire Avenue. Good evening. I am here tonight, along with my neighbors from Kirkshire, to make a special request of council. And that request is that you suspend the bulldozing and destruction of all homes, as well as suspend the construction of large additions of existing homes immediately, until you, with the advice of the Planning Commission, can come up with a concrete and sensible amended zoning ordinance. We need an ordinance with a sensible ratio of hard space to green space, no matter the property size, and to develop with that a drainage plan that is effective and actually works for the property owners and their neighbors. Again, we would like this suspension to go into effect immediately. Beverly Hills is becoming completely unaffordable when new housing starts at $500,000. It appears that housing is not meeting the needs of most people and the families in the market for a home. The homes we see going up around Beverly Hills are not being developed for baby boomers, the largest population in the U.S., and, oh, by the way, the largest population with the most amount of money, and they're certainly not being developed for millennials, the largest group looking for their first home. They are being developed so developers make the most amount of money using the least amount of land in the least amount of time. It does not appear that they are interested in whether the house is right for the neighborhood, nor are they interested in the impact of the house on the neighborhood, not to mention the larger community. As of right now, I could no longer live in a house that was 2 stories. I would have had to have moved. I started getting arthritis in my knees a couple years ago, and some days stairs are impossible. Now, if you told me that would be my situation 2 years ago, I would have thought you were nuts. But I am a baby boomer, and 2- and 3-story homes for this group, this huge group, is no longer practical as things like knees and hips and ankles start to give way. But that is increasingly what we are forced to choose from, homes that have 3 and 4 sets of stairs. I have said this before, and I will say it again. It is wrong for people who have lived on a street for 25-plus years not to have a say in what goes up across the street, next door to them, and behind them, especially when the developer is there to make a fast buck and he is gone, often leaving lasting damage such as the displacement of water onto surrounding yards and permanent shade to the surrounding houses. And those are just to name a few of the lasting issues that neighbors have to deal with once these large structures go up. So I ask you again to please suspend the destruction of any existing homes until sensible property requirements prevail and a good drainage plan can be established. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nagel. Anyone else want to be heard? Ms. Michaels.
Good evening. My name is Kay Michael. I am also from Kirkshire and here also in behalf of the concerned owners of Kirkshire. The Planning Board has appointed its subcommittee for the purpose of amending the zoning ordinance to address lot coverage limitations, among other things, which we're appreciative of. However, we are concerned about the pace at which it's moving compared to the pace at which the new construction is going up and the houses are being demolished. We wanted to make a special request tonight that a member of our group be added to the subcommittee to help contribute to some of the brainstorming that needs to be done to come up with a sensible plan. This is a letter, a formal request to appoint Cynthia Nagel also to the Zoning Ordinance Amendment Subcommittee. And I'd like to note that the city of Troy has a zoning ordinance with a 30% maximum lot area coverage requirement. And it includes this wonderful incentive to new builders or homeowners that wish to expand their homes to modify that maximum limitation if the builder obtains sustainable design project status. So their ordinance has a stormwater management requirement and engineering standards, and then they talk about the additional best management practices that the builders can use to satisfy a qualification for a sustainable design. This is a sample of the relevant pages from that ordinance which talk about the incentive, which is what we want to do to give builders incentive to actually do something about the drainage problem that they're contributing to. A provision like that would be exactly what we need. With respect to the drainage issue, we've not gotten any closer to any kind of a resolution or a plan for any of the drainage issues. New construction is only making things worse for us. I'd like to show you, also I have pictures from just a couple of days ago. This is the new construction site on Kirkshire, which is a completely filled 9-foot hole with stormwater. And this is the house next door, which is completely flooded and underwater. And this is only going to get worse. When the house goes up and this is plugged with a basement, this water is going to go into all of our lots. Something has to be done. In that vein, we would like to request that council create a subcommittee to work on implementing a drainage plan for new construction and for expansions of existing homes, and to, as part of that, require that drainage plans be submitted and be approved, that the developers, the builders have to abide by green design standards that we create. This is a letter of a formal request to establish that committee, and if possible, I would like to be also appointed to that committee to help come up with some sustainable drainage designs. And then lastly, the urgency of this cannot be stressed enough. The pace at which the buying of the homes, the demolition of the homes, and the construction is happening is just at an unbelievable rapid pace. We are facing signs like this on our street on a weekly basis that we've asked builders to take down. They've sworn at us, hung up on us. They're not interested. I'm going to pass that down. This is the kind of neighborhood that we're now dealing with on a daily basis. And we would like an action plan to be implemented at this point in time. As Ms. Nagel said, we ask that you please stop approvals of permits for new construction until the zoning ordinance is amended to deal with the lot size coverage and drainage plan requirements are in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Michael. Anyone else in the audience would like to be heard on an issue not, or item not on the published agenda? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. There are 3 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first is review and consider approval of minutes of the regular council meeting held May 1, 2018. The second is review and file bills recapped as of Monday, May 14, 2018. And the third is review and confirm the 2017 assessment rolls for dust control and other miscellaneous assessments. I'll entertain a resolution to approve the consent agenda as published.
Mr. President.
Mr. Aboud.
I move forward to approve the consent agenda as published. Thank you.
Support. Further discussion from my right, from my left, from the audience? Hearing none, there's been a resolution that's been supported. Ms. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Aboud?
Yes.
Mr. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Mooney?
Yes.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes.
Mr. Nunez?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Let's move on to the business agenda, and the first item is a public hearing on the proposed 2018-2019 budgets for the general fund, major and local roads funds, the water and sewer operating, and other special revenue funds. And fortunately, we have both Ms. McCarthy, our finance director, and our esteemed village manager, who's going to walk us through everything that we need to know about the budget, but we're afraid to ask. Mr. Wilson, please feel free to hand it over to Ms. McCarthy at any time.
Is that fortunately or unfortunately? I didn't.
Whatever.
I didn't catch that. Thank you. Just as a quick announcement, it does appear that the meeting is not going out live. It is being recorded. We had a power outage a couple of weeks ago, and we haven't used that board since then, and it appears it might have damaged some of our equipment. So it is being recorded. I don't know who I'm telling this to because nobody's watching it live, but if you watch it later when it's recorded, this is a little through the matrix here, I think, but
I believe the audio is live.
The audio is live? Okay.
He doesn't have anything.
No?
Okay, let's go.
So, for what that's worth. I don't know, is the web streaming working or no? The web streaming is working. That's what I was worried wouldn't work. Okay, very quickly, you have before you, in accordance with the village charter, the proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2018, which is referred to as fiscal year 19, and 1920, which will be referred to as fiscal year 20. I'm going to go over the executive summary. We've got some charts that dealing with expenditures and revenues that Ms. McCarthy's going to go over. And then as we conclude, we have some other information regarding the tax rates and millage rates that I will go over at the end. I'll just go, I know we went over this at the budget presentation. I'm going to recover some of that and talk about a couple of things just very briefly for those who were not here that night. The proposed millage rate for the upcoming fiscal year beginning July 1 will be 11.9054 mils. That is a reduction of just about 0.6 of a mil from the previous year. The rate for the general fund will increase slightly to 1.9353 mils, and however, the rate on the public safety fund will decrease to 9.1239. That's a reduction from the previous year, the current year, of 9.3054. That's roughly a 2% decrease in the public safety millage rate, which is the largest of all of our millages. There's also a slight decrease in the library fund. The decreases that we're seeing in the millage rates are due to something that's known as the Headley Amendment. Some of you may have heard of the Headley Amendment before. There's two kind of relevant issues that I'm just going to give the Cliff Notes version of: the Headley Amendment and Proposal A. Proposal A was put in place in 1994 as a constitutional amendment approved by the voters, and the overall impact of that is to prevent homeowners in their properties which are homesteaded from having their tax rates, their tax bill increased by anything greater than the rate of inflation in any one year. So it's a protection for the homeowners. The Headley Amendment is older than that. It goes back to the 70s. It has a moderate impact on the individual homeowner bill, but the intent is if the taxable value in a community grows by larger than the rate of inflation in any particular year, there are automatic rollbacks in the allowable millage rates that are imposed upon that community. That is something we've been dealing with. We talked about that quite extensively at the budget workshop, and I'm not going to repeat all that, but the village has been subject to Headley rollbacks, particularly in the public safety fund, as after the housing price crash, we've rebounded quite quickly. However, the rate of inflation has remained relatively low, the CPI, which is what governs the rate of inflation for the Headley Amendment calculation. So for the last 4 or 5 years, we have been subject to these state-imposed reductions in our millage rate. That's probably going to continue for a couple of years, and it's something we'll probably talk about more going forward. But that's the primary reason why you're seeing the reduction in your actual millage rates. And then you also have the protection of Proposal A to prevent your individual property tax bill from going up, again, greater than the rate of inflation, which has been, I believe, what, 2.1? Roughly the CPI for this last year. The general fund is going to generate revenue of $3.312 million. Expenses will be slightly below that at $3.293 million. We're going to end up with a slight surplus in the general fund, but which is also included in that. Those expenditures are also going to transfer $200,000 to major roads and $50,000, $200,000 to local roads and $50,000 to major roads, and we're going to make an additional contribution of $100,000 to the capital projects fund. So we're going to make those capital contributions and still end up with a slight surplus. The general fund balances will be well in excess of the 20% recommended by the council. We'll have about $1.24 million in reserves as of June 30th, 2019, based upon this projection. The Public Safety Department, which is our largest cost center, will generate revenues of just over $5.5 million. And expenses are going to be roughly the same, again, $5.5 million. There's going to be a slight surplus and just less than $10,000 for this year, and I'm projecting a slight surplus of around $70,000 at the end of the year. We talked, again, I won't go into it in great detail, but the mandatory Headley reductions have caused a bit of an issue within the Public Safety Department. Not significant, but it has impacted the expenditure process that we were on for the last 2 to 3 years. We've had a couple of other issues that have pinched our ability to generate as much reserves as we would like. Those are temporary, but we did have some fire truck issues that our trucks, which were probably fully depreciated to begin with, and they became inoperable, and we ended up in a situation where we did have to purchase 2 vehicles, one of which we were able to make a cash purchase for, the other of which was financed. So,
excuse me,
seeing the impact of that.
Our trucks are not inoperable. They are in need of replacement.
Better said than I did. Thank you. I like fully depreciated. Those are going to be replaced within the calendar year, and those orders have already been made. So again, we'll have about 1.3% of revenue as a fund balance at the end of this year. And that's a matter we're going to be tackling going forward into fiscal year 20 and 21. For the water and sewer fund, again, that's our second largest cost center within this budget. We're recommending that the infrastructure charge remain the same at $70 per bill, and the debt service charge will remain the same at $20. We're not recommending an increase in that. Again, as we talked about at the council meeting, there will be an increase in the commodity rates for both water and sewer of 7% on both. That is projected for this year. That is kind of to offset the increases that we are receiving from SACWA and the Great Lakes Water Authority. The water and sewer fund has not been in great shape. It is getting better. We do have as the auditor stated, we do have a large fund balance. Most of that is tied up into capital that's not really liquid for us. On a cash basis, we are working through to get rid of some negative balances we have on the cash side, and village administration is confident with the budget that we projected for this year and for next year that will happen. We're spending $490,000 for library services and projecting just slightly about $10,000 more than that for the next year. Again, that is just generated through the library millage that the voters approved, and it's simply a pass-through that we give to Baldwin Library for our participation in their operations. We are going to make a contribution of just over $1 million this year, and slightly larger than that again next year for retiree health care. We are anticipating having $7.05 million set aside for future retiree health care costs as of June 30th. This is significant, and again, we talked a lot at the budget workshop about the retiree health care situation. I'm not going to go into that in detail. One quick note I'll make on page 47, we did make an update to the balance that we currently have in our retiree health care fund. That was the latest information we had as the budget went out to print. As of April 23rd, we had $6.89 million sitting in reserves. So we're anticipating that to grow this year, and next year, $7.05 million set aside by June 30th of 19, and $7.5 million on June 30th of 2020. Why that's significant, and again, just for those that weren't here for the budget workshop, we are, for the first time this year, beginning to use some of those retiree health care funds that we've set aside to actually pay retiree health care premiums. We've been aggressively building that fund for the last 6 years. I believe that as late as 2011, we only had about $1.5 million set aside in that fund. You can see it's at $7 million today. Because of changes that council has made previously, we have limited our liability on the if you will, on the back end of this retiree health care program, as new hires are no longer offered retiree health care in retirement. They're offered a health care savings plan, which we both participate in and set money aside for that. We don't have a guaranteed retiree health care obligation. So we know that those liabilities are capped. Per the last actuary we have about $14 million in liability for that total. That's a liability that's going to be borne over probably the next 45 to 50 years. We have just over half of that setting aside, and it's continuing to grow. So I'm comfortable with more than comfortable with our position to begin allocating some of those monies toward the payment of retiree health care, and that fund should continue to grow. But when we look at the lifetime of that retiree health care obligations, I think we've done the right thing. We've been very aggressive in setting that aside, and we're very sustainable going forward for both retiree health care and for pensions, which are not directly a part of this budget, but is also something that we've talked about. We've got some charts regarding the revenues and expenditures. Ms. McCarthy's going to go over those. Ellen's got those up on the board, and we'll go through that, and I'll come back to talk a little bit about millage rates.
Before Ms. McCarthy starts, did he say everything you told him to say?
And even faster than I told him.
Okay, thank you. Well, he went so fast, well, okay. Let's see the charts, Ms. McCarthy.
The first chart is the village revenue, and this one is just by category. This has all the funds. The main categories are property taxes, which are divvied up between general, public safety, and library according to the millage. And then we get revenue from the state of Michigan for $1.8 million. And if you look at the bottom, we get water fund revenue, lower at the bottom there, close to $5 million we've budgeted this year. Probably won't quite make that. And that's directly from your water bills, the debt charges, infrastructure, water, and sewer. And then there's other various income categories there, totaling 16.663. If you look at the next tab, it should be tabs. Oh, okay. But it's in a different order.
If you want to follow along in your books, this is page 62 in your budget book, if you want to follow along on the charts.
All right, well, the next one is, that's fine. Let's do that one. Village revenues, and that's the same number, 16.663. This one is by funds instead of by category. So those are our major funds. And the biggest fund, as you can see, is public safety. It's 5.509 million. They're about at a break even. And the next one, we have general fund. Water fund is another big one, 5 million. That's pretty much a break even as well. Healthcare general fund is at 3.3, plus the others, capital project fund at 103. And that is comprised of 100,000 is a contribution from the general fund. So that's the 16.663 by fund. And a fun fact that of the village, basically half of all expenditures are for public safety and the cost of water and sewer. So a lot of our costs are fixed. And, you know, they're general costs we have to spend, we're required to spend them. And then the next one she's on is, this is expenditures. So this is a list of basically by fund, by department. And if you get a budget book, you can look at every single account if you want to know what's in a certain department, a certain fund. The general fund, the biggest one, is public services, and there's our rubbish collection. Our rubbish fees are in there. That's the bulk of the 1 million. There's transfers to other funds that Chris mentioned. There's transfers to the major fund of 50, and the local fund, and the capital fund. The major roads, it's listed out there. There's a couple major projects on the major roads this year. We have 300,000 for a project on 14 and Lesser, 75 Evergreen and 13, and 35 in the Greenfield Road, and that's in conjunction with Royal Oak. So the local roads, that's mostly maintenance, traffic. I don't think there's at this time, any major projects. But there is a local road survey coming up in June, and at that time, I believe they'll assess all the local roads and the status of it. The other funds, retiree health care, Chris mentioned that. Those are the contributions. The general fund and the public safety fund contributes. They actually pay the retiree health care, and that's considered a contribution. And then capital project fund, we have some public safety improvements to the building that we need to make. And then there's other transfers in there. The water fund, those are the different categories of the water fund. And that totals our expenditures of 16.8. And if you flip on the next page, here it is, 16.8. And this is by fund. So the biggest one, again, is public safety at 5.5 million. That would pretty much equal the revenues. And public safety, they're very prudent in their budget. I have to give Rich credit. He tries to save money where possible, and a lot of the expenses are fixed. Retiree health care has gone up, which we have no control over. And we all value our public safety department. Water fund, again, a lot of those charges, it's 5 million. The revenue is close to 5 million. Maybe it'll hit there. The thing is, everyone tries to save water, so then our water revenue decreases. You know, you want to save water, but that hurts the revenue. And a lot of our costs in the water fund are fixed as well. We have to pay for the water, we have to pay for the sewer, we have to maintain all the sewers and the lines and everything. So none of that is free. So that totals the 16.8. So as you see, we're running, every fund is pretty consistent with the expenses, different year-to-year expenses. There's some differences from prior. And let's see, the major road fund, like I told you, they had those three major projects, so that's a little higher with the 300,000 on 14 and Lasser and the other projects. The public safety has to improve their building, that's a requirement. What else I can tell you? It's a pretty tight budget, I guess I'm trying to say. There's not a lot of fluff in it. It's well monitored, and we're doing, we're monitoring, we're budgeting according to our revenues. So I think it's a pretty good budget this year. There's always unexpected things, but, and is that, what else?
Back to Mr. Wilson.
Back to Mr. Wilson, who's going to talk about millage rates, which is on the next slide.
Yes. Just very briefly, this is a chart that administration has put together to show the total millage rate that will be billed on your summer and winter tax bills. This just shows the breakdown of where those revenues go. The largest at 12.0727 mils actually goes to Birmingham schools. The village is second at just over 11.9 mils. There's also part of the almost 9 mils to Oakland County, 6 mils for the state education tax, and then there's smaller millages. There's less than a mil for smart regional transportation, 0.6 mils for Southfield Township, and then other parks and rec and art and the zoo authority. So that's just a breakdown of your total millage rate. Again, just a disclaimer, this is for a homesteaded property. If you do have a non-homestead or commercial property, these rates are higher. There is an additional levy on that for the state education tax, but most people, if this is your residence, this is a breakdown of what your millage rate will go to. The next slide, and again, this was a nice chart that Ms. McCarthy put together this year. We haven't included this before, but and I apologize if that's a little small on the screen. This is page 66 within your budget document. It just shows for the last 5 fiscal years. The really important category there is that if you go across that line that's bolded that says total, it shows within every year what the maximum allowable millage levy is, and then it shows the millage that we actually levied. And that gives you kind of an indication of what I was referring to earlier, that the impact that the Headley reductions have had on our maximum allowable millage rates. For fiscal year 15, we were at a rate of 12.7944 was the maximum we could levy. We levied slightly less than that. That's been reduced by almost 0.8 of a mil today to 11.9054. So that's, for a relatively low millage rate that we have, that's been a significant reduction, and I anticipate reductions like that to continue. The good news is that the taxable value, the tax base, the line right below that, has grown, and that's been a benefit to all of our residents and homeowners, from just over 501 million 5 years ago to 578 million this year, and we do expect that to continue to grow at a quite healthy rate. So this is a chart we'll probably continue to produce in future years, but I think it gives a good showing of the impact that the Headley reductions have. The second chart, and again, this is something that Sheila and I believe Carrie Marsh in our office put together this year. Keep going. There. We've got a table, but let's just go down and take a look at the graph. The table is just the table of the total millage rates for the village going as far back as 1996. Then I think the graph is the important. Start on the left, you'll start with 1996 and go forward all the way till this year. It just shows you kind of the ups and downs of the millage rate over time. The low point being a few years ago in 2011 at 10.1924. The highest levy ever was going back to 1999 at 13.6275. I think at that time we had a CSO millage and maybe the last year or two of a public safety building millage which rolled off, and the rate went down a bit over the year. So we're working in a relatively steady range here. Anywhere from just over 10 to less than 14 has been the historical rate for the village now for 20 years. So it fluctuates a bit year to year, but the swings have not been wild. And I think hopefully that's provided some stability our homeowners. So again, this is another chart we'll continue to monitor on a year-to-year basis. Now, that's small. I'm going to have trouble seeing that. That's small. Page 68, the last two pages, and it's, again, just briefly, we've talked a little bit about our total debt levy.
This is fine print taken to extremes.
Yeah, we'll talk about the debt. We'll just show this in really small. You don't talk about it. We should put it up bigger because the debt is actually a pretty positive story here. As we said today, we have, for the community, we have less than $300,000 total in outstanding debt. That includes principal and interest. That has decreased tremendously. I believe as far back as 2008, it was around $8 million. We have a very, very low debt ratio in the village comparable to our maximum amount we would be able to levy. We're right at around 3% of our current, less than 3% of our current taxable value. So that's a very positive position to be in, and the debt's being paid down at a relatively aggressive rate. If we only have less than $3 million outstanding today, we'll pay down about $432,000 in this current fiscal year that ends June 30th, and over $1 million of that will be paid in the next two fiscal years. So as we sit here, 24 months from now, that number will be around $1.6 million. So not that that's not subject to change. I know we've talked about a couple things, and we may look to some debt financing for some issues we have going forward. But as we stand today, that's a fairly remarkable low level of debt for a municipality to have. The last page, and again, this is very detailed, but if you want to take a look at that, that's all of the outstanding debt and bond issues that we have broken down to their final payment as we get, including the year 2029, where we will owe $3,931 based upon our current outstanding bonds that we have. So Sheila's put that together, and we'll keep updating that on a yearly basis. But it shows even with a low amount of debt that we have, it is quite front-loaded when we're paying it back. So as we look to debt financing potentially in the future, there's a lot of opportunity there for us to do that. Before I take any questions, I just quickly should say thanks to Sheila and to Peggy. I know the bulk of the budget document that you have here was really produced by them, certainly much more than me. The graphs, I know Carrie worked on quite a bit. Thanks to Ellen for putting the presentation together tonight. Who am I forgetting, Sheila?
And the rest of the staff have done an outstanding job.
Particularly Chief Taranjo, who slaved over the spreadsheets, I know, for hours on his side. But I hope Sheila's put a lot of time together in this budget document, and I think the footnotes as well. They continue to grow every year, but I think they're concise, and I think they address hopefully they address the relevant points. Anytime we have a line item where we fear there's an issue, we try to add a footnote in there, and those are for your reference and the public's reference, so they can hopefully understand what's in the budget document. So those are my comments.
Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing on the proposed 2018-2019 budgets as presented by overview by Mr. Wilson and Ms. McCarthy just now. Would anyone like to be heard on this? Take questions, comments? That was, I opened that at 8:17. Hearing none. I will close it at 8:18.
Do you want to talk?
I will. You can escape. Good evening. I'll open it up to any comments or questions from council. Start on my left. Mr. Nunez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We've gone into a lot of depth of this a while ago. So I've looked through this. Is there anything that's substantially different that's been added or taken away from what we've got for the final?
No, we made the updates as recommended by the council at the meeting of April the 10th. The only real update that we had, and I draw your attention to it, was in the retiree health care. We did get an updated balance for that, and that's frankly has been a bit more positive than I anticipated. I caution you to follow any kind of investment on a day-to-day basis, but we did check this to make sure that our projections going forward were accurate. I'm confident that where we told you we will end up in the retiree health care fund, that we will. That was the only fundamental change that we made, other than the discussions we had at the April 10th.
Thank you. We're satisfied.
Mr. Delaney.
I want to thank administration, Mr. Wilson, Ms. McCarthy, Ms. Marshall, everyone, really. We've had several meetings on this. We've discussed it. In addition to that, President Mooney directed Councilman Owen and myself to meet with the administration on this, to go over the presentation and their charts and their graphs, and we certainly had a nice meeting and appreciated that. I would indicate that, unfortunately, John is not here tonight, John Owen, and because he's ill. And I had kind of pushed a number of issues regarding this presentation over the last year, and it really started after our last presentation. I thought that we needed to explain it to the public. So when I heard tonight that it's not going out on TV, I thought, you got to be kidding me. I'm worried about conveying this information to the public, and I hope we will have something that will be rebroadcast.
It is being recorded. It will be rebroadcast in its regular program. Just unfortunately, the TV broadcast was not going live tonight. The web streaming is working tonight, but it's the live TV broadcast was not going out tonight. But it will be broadcast at its regular schedule.
If we finish early enough, I'm going to give you the address of both people watching so that you can present that to them this evening.
Well, we do have some optimists on the council, and we do have a pessimist. So I think it is important, and I think we should continue to do this, maybe tweak it every year and make it a little bit better. It's about government, and it's about people's money. So hopefully the audience will grow. Just a couple notes on public safety. I agree with Mr. Mooney, and in fact, our trucks were not inoperable. But one of them was coming to the end of its useful life, and we had not replaced a third truck that was beyond the end of its useful life. So we have two good trucks, and we have a delivery coming on the first one in September, I'm told, and the other one will be after the first of the year. Those were absolutely necessary. Cost a lot of money, but they were necessary. On water and sewer, nobody wants to pay more in taxes or for water than we have to, but unfortunately, we have to. My understanding was, this is going up 7%. That is the commodity part of your bill. That is not the entire bill, because there are charges on there for infrastructure and debt service, which are not going up 7%.
That is correct.
That is correct, okay. There was a recommendation, my understanding, by our auditor that we should increase this substantially higher. Is that correct?
That is correct as well.
And was that figure 20%?
That was the rough number that was mentioned
right.
to village administration. Yes.
And the council said, no, we're not going to do that.
Yes.
Okay.
This year.
Where these are increases that are passed on to us. We don't make the decision exactly what the water costs. That's decided by the Great Lakes Water Authority. Unfortunately, it is just a difficult fact of life. And the more that we have tried to figure this problem out, and it just keeps changing on us. So we're like every other community. I would, on the retiree health care, I'm not going to say anything about that, but I hope President Mooney does, because he's been here. He was here when this was a major cloud on the horizon for the village. And we're well on the way to solving that problem, and I'd ask him for a few elegant words on what has happened over the last several years to get us through that very, very difficult situation. That is really all I have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Any comments or questions from my right? Mr.
I have nothing further than what's already been
Thank you, Mr.
said.
Newell.
Thank you.
Mr. Booth?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, everybody kind of said what all of us are thinking, obviously, but aside from thanking administration, I do want to also thank the council for being fiscally responsible and understanding and know what direction. When you said people's money, so that's important that we're responsible for that. So just wanted to recognize council, those are sitting here and those are not here, President Pro Tem Petty and John Owen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I wasn't actually going to make any comments other than to indicate that administration's done an outstanding job, as they have all the time. They've gone back even into the 80s, doing a very nice job in making sure that our budget is balanced and that everything goes along. The efforts on this administration, Mr. Wilson, and this council and the councils that have preceded it since the millage was passed in 2010 have taken steps to make certain that the highest level of services are brought to this community. That means that we've hired outstanding public safety officers who are well-trained, well-educated, and know their jobs and do them well. We are attempting to maintain the equipment that we need to make sure that this community is protected. We are compelled to pay retiree health care for public safety officers and for others that in the past have retired. Some of them are 92 years old and still being covered by medical that we provide, but that was a contract, and some of those contracts were formed by arbitration. About 8 years ago, the suggestion was that we were somehow underfunded in our retiree health care slush fund, or reserves, not slush fund, but reserves, and because we had $1 million in that. Well, the fact of the matter is that we had over $1 million in that reserve when almost no community had any money in reserve. And so with the help of administration and with the dedication of the people of this community that voted in favor of the millage in 2010 and the shepherding of those tax dollars that came to us, we've gone from about $1 million to, as you heard tonight, $7 million. And frankly, although the target is $15 million, if we get to the point where we're at $10-12 million, which will be sooner than we think, we'll be able to maintain our health care forever for our retirees. And I'd also point out that we've changed the way retiree health care is structured so that we're not going to run into a problem into the future, making sure that Aetna and Blue Cross Blue Shield are making all the money in the world. We're faced with that. Outstanding job, Mr. Wilson. Ms. McCarthy, I know that you're the one who coached him all the way, and there's no way he's going to convince me otherwise. So well done. Your staff, as always, has done a great job, and we thank Ms. Marshall for her presentation. With that, we're going to move on to a review and consider the adoption of 2018-2019 fiscal year Village of Beverly Hills budget. Mr. Delaney, I think you were about to read a resolution.
The Village Council of Beverly Hills conducted a public hearing on the proposed 2018-2019 fiscal year budget on May 15th, 2018, and public comments have been heard and considered. Therefore, be it resolved that the 2018-2019 fiscal year budget for the General Fund, Public Safety Fund, Library Fund, Major Road Fund, Local Streets Fund, Drug Law Enforcement, Retiree Health Care, Vacation Reserve, Sick Leave, and Water and Sewer Operating Fund in the following amounts be hereby adopted. Fund named: General Fund, revenues, $3,312,494. Appropriations, $3,312,494. $293,091. Public Safety Fund, $5,509,307. Appropriations, $5,500,943. Library Fund, $489,952. Appropriations, $489,952. Major Road Fund, $674,714. Appropriation, $728,463. Local Street Fund, $502,116. Appropriation, $413,041. Drug Law Enforcement, $2,015. Appropriation, $52,000. Retiree Health Care, $1,067,996. Appropriation, $1,059,696. Vacation Reserve, $30,750. Appropriation, $26,758. Sick Leave Reserve, $15,250. Appropriation, $19,000. Water and Sewer Operating, $4,955,730. Appropriation, $4,985,086. Capital Projects Fund, $103,000. Appropriation, $260,500.
This resolution, is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Aboud. Further discussion from council? Discussion from the audience? Hearing none, there's been a resolution that's been supported. Mr. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Mooney?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I misheard her. Mr. Delaney's vote was yes. My vote is yes.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes.
Mr. Nunez?
Yes.
Mr. Aboud?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Let's move on to review and consider appropriating funds for the 2018-2019 fiscal year Village of Beverly Hills budget. Mr. Delaney, you have another resolution.
The Village Council Beverly Hills has adopted its annual budget for its fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 in accordance with state law and the village charter, and the Village Council is also required to adopt an Appropriations Act to provide the authority to incur obligations and expend public funds. Therefore, be it resolved that the adopted budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019 shall establish the approved appropriation levels for said fiscal year. Be it further resolved that the Village Council does hereby authorize the village manager to execute transfers between appropriations, provided that each transfer be approved by the Village Council prior to its execution. Be it further resolved that the Village Council retains authority to amend the village budget in this Appropriations Act at such times when deviations from the projected revenues and authorized expenditure levels become necessary and the amount of the deviations becomes known.
As a resolution, is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Nunez. Discussion from council, discussion from the audience. Hearing none, Ms. Lyons, there's been a resolution, it's been supported. Please call the roll.
Mr. Mooney?
Yes.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes.
Mr. Nunez?
Yes.
Mr. Aboud?
Yes.
Mr. Delaney?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Move on to agenda item number 4, which is review and consider the adoption of the 2018-2019 Village of Beverly Hills millage rate. Mr. Delaney, could you handle that for us, please?
The Village Council on May 15th, 2018 adopted the 2018-2019 village budget, and the Village Council must adopt a millage rate to be spread on the village tax roll for 2018 and Public Act 5 of 1982 does not apply to levying for debt service, and the proposed 11.9054 mills for operating purposes for the general fund, public safety fund, and library fund do not exceed the 12.9184 mills maximum approved by the voters at the November 2nd, 2010 election. Therefore, be it resolved that the village council does hereby approve the total 2018 millage rate for the village at 11.9054 mills. And the 11.9054 millage rate is to be spread as follows. General fund, 1.9353 mills. Public safety fund, 9.1239 mills. Library fund, 0.8462 mills. Total millage rate, 11.9054 mills.
Been a resolution, is there support? Support. Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Further discussion from any member of council? Take input from the audience. Hearing none, there's been a resolution, it's been supported. Ms. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Mueller.
Yes.
Mr. Nunez.
Yes.
Mr. Abud.
Yes.
Mr. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Mooney.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thanks. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, which is review and consider resolution to adopt the 2018-2019 rate schedule for water consumption and sewage disposal. Mr. Delaney, can you help us out again, please?
Each premises within the village connected to the water and/or sanitary sewer system shall pay a consumption charge based upon the amount of water used as shown by the water meter installed in each premises as follows. Water consumption, $1.9688 per 100 cubic feet. Sanitary sewer OM&R, 5.8315 per 100 cubic feet. Total 7.8003. Debt service, $20 per bill. Infrastructure, $70 per bill. Water only, 1.9688 per 100 cubic feet. Sewer only, 151.51. Infrastructure, 42.50. Debt service for a total of 194.01. This will be effective with all water and sewer usage after July 1st, 2018, and thereafter until changed.
Should that read as of, on July 1st, 2018 and thereafter?
Yes.
Would you amend that to indicate that?
I would so amend.
Is there support for the resolution?
Support.
Mr. Mueller, thank you. There's been a resolution that's been supported. Any further comment from council? Any comment from the audience? Hearing none, there's been a resolution that's been supported. Ms. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Nunez.
Yes.
Mr. Abud.
Yes.
Mr. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Mooney.
Yes.
Mr. Mueller.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
And Mr. Delaney, if we could move on to item number 8, and a resolution to adopt the 2018 Village Beverly Hills charges for services for rubbish collection and disposal.
The Village Council of Beverly Hills has adopted its annual budget for its fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, in accordance with state law and the village charter. And the Village Council has adopted an Appropriations Act to provide the authority to incur obligations and expend public funds. Therefore, be it resolved that the adopted budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019 shall establish a charge for services for rubbish collection and disposal for resident customers for the said fiscal year. Be it further resolved that the Village Council does hereby authorize the village manager to authorize the village treasurer to add an annual charge in the amount of $140 to each residential 2018 tax bill for rubbish collection and disposal.
This resolution, is there support, Mr. Nunez?
Support.
There is support. Further discussion from council? Discussion from the audience? Hearing none, there's been a resolution that's been supported. Ms. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Abud?
Yes.
Mr. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Mooney?
Yes.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes.
Mr. Nunez?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
I want to thank Mr. Delaney for going through all those resolutions, especially since all of us can blame him for jacking up our taxes. Okay. Let's move on to agenda item number 7, which is a public hearing to receive comments on the updated 5-year community recreation plan. Before I open the public hearing, Mr. Mueller, could you please give us a quick overview of this?
I will. Thank you very much. This is the 5-year community recreation plan that will now cover 2018 through 2023, inclusive of those years. The purpose of the plan is really to help guide us in terms of recreational goals and improvements in the village for the next 5 years. During this process, which was started earlier this year, there was a lot of public input that was received. We received residential input through public comment at the various Park and Recs meetings. We sent out a survey via the newsletter and available online. And the public comment went in to help draft the plan that has been available on the village website and at the village office. The draft plan has been available for public input and review for the last 49 days. Notice of this plan review and comment availability was sent in the Village Weekly electronic newsletter, and it was also announced at public meetings at Park and Rec meeting and this public comment meeting here. There are 3 primary goals of the recreation plan. The first is to improve recreational facilities, to encompass system-wide recreation, welcoming all residents to encourage healthy and active lifestyles, to enhance biodiversity, protect wildlife, improve water quality and natural resources, and to use existing community resources efficiently and demonstrate fiscal responsibility by providing efficient administration of the park and recreation facilities. I'm going to briefly just go through very quickly the primary recommendations for Beverly Hills Park. Continue to maintain the facilities for maximum lifespan of the equipment. Research and consider improvements to the pond area. Install drinking water fountain near the playground. Install new playground surface. Install handicap accessible sidewalk ramps. Implement long-term plan to eradicate buckthorn. Resurface the tennis courts, plant additional trees throughout the park, install additional walking paths, and restore the woodlands. Those are all things to be considered over the next 5 years. For Riverside Park, maintain the existing facilities, overall beautification, and natural shoreline restoration. Thank you. Public input. Hidden Rivers, education of public to ensure proper use of the area, consider greater public accessibility, and improve signage among that area. And then finally, Douglas Evans, maintain the area, clear refuge, cut the grasses as needed, education of public to ensure proper use of the area, and consider greater public accessibility. That is a very...
It's the overview of the 5-year plan for the parks, our community recreation plan. So I'm going to open the public hearing on this at 8:43. Who would like to be heard on this plan? Hearing none, I'll close the meeting at 8:44. Close the public hearing at 8:44. Let's move on then to item number 8. Mr. Mueller, do you have a resolution to adopt the recreation plan?
I do. As follows. Whereas the Village of Beverly Hills has undertaken a planning process to determine the recreation and natural resource conservation needs and desires of its residents during a 5-year period covering the years 2018 to 2023. And whereas the Village of Beverly Hills began the process of developing a community recreation plan in accordance with the most recent guidelines developed by the Department of Natural Resources and made available to local communities. And whereas the residents of Beverly Hills were provided with a well-advertised opportunity during the development of the draft plan to express opinions, ask questions, and discuss all aspects of the recreation and natural resource conservation plan. And whereas the public was given a well-advertised opportunity and reasonable accommodations to review the final draft plan for a period of at least 30 days. And whereas a public hearing was held this evening, May 15, 2018, in the Village of Beverly Hills Council Chamber to provide an opportunity for all residents of the planning area to express opinions, ask questions, and discuss all aspects of the community recreation plan. And whereas the Village of Beverly Hills has developed the plan as a guideline for improving recreation and enhancing natural resource conservation for the Village of Beverly Hills. And whereas after the public hearing, the Beverly Hills Village Council voted to adopt said community recreation plan. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Village of Beverly Hills Council hereby adopts the Village of Beverly Hills Community Recreation Plan as a guideline for improving recreation for the residents of the Village of Beverly Hills.
This resolution, is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Aboud. Discussion from council? Anyone in the audience like to be heard? Hearing none, there's been a resolution. It's been supported. Ms. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Mooney?
Yes.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes.
Mr. Nunez?
Yes.
Mr. Aboud?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, let's move on to item number 10. Mr. Delaney, I hate to put this on you again, but since your input to the Birmingham Cable Board, Birmingham Area Cable Board is so critical, I thought we'd have this second announcement of the vacancy on the Birmingham Area Cable Board handed to you.
Thank you, President Mooney. With the resignation of Frank Malley, and regretfully because he contributed quite a bit to the cable board, we have a vacancy. Tonight is the second announcement of the vacancy with an expiration date of June 30th, 2020. That is the remainder of Mr. Malley's term. The application deadline is May 30th, 2018 at 4:30 p.m. A cable subcommittee has been appointed. I will chair that because I'm the liaison to the cable board. Members Aboud and Mooney will gather on June 5th, 2018 at 7:15 p.m. That is before our next council meeting. To select from the applicants for the position, which we hope there are many. That is it, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Let's move on to agenda item number 12, or 10. Mr. Aboud points out that I'm not counting very well tonight.
Politely.
Politely, respectfully.
Respectfully.
Usually each year at the second meeting in May, we announce the expiration of certain terms, the terms of certain members of the various boards and commissions, and we'd like to make an announcement that people may come in and certainly make application for those expiring terms, including the incumbents. And therefore, for terms expiring on June 30, 2018, there will be three expiration of terms. Those are the positions held by Janice Hausman, the current chair, Bill Condick, the former chair, and Jennifer Ruprecht, the vice chair. On the Planning Commission, Andrew Drummond, George Ostrowski, the current chair, and Robert Ruprecht, their terms are ending as well. On the Zoning Board, there will be the terms of Chris Crossan, Karen Mitchell, Marianne Verdehaus will expire on June 30th, and the alternate members, David Crawford and Christina Gennari, will also expire. These folks have all have the right to make application, And I would make the comment that all of these folks have done an outstanding job serving on the boards. However, it has been our policy for a number of years to open this up to evaluation by subcommittees of the council to make recommendation. And so there will be a second announcement of those vacancies that will be at our first meeting in June, and we will have a deadline for applications to be June 8, 2018 at close of business. That constitutes the first announcement of various vacancies on various boards and commissions. All right, let's move on to paragraph 11. Review and consider proposal to repair, repaint, restripe, polish, otherwise rehab the tennis courts and restripe the basketball court at Beverly Park. Mr. Mueller, quickly.
Thank you. I would suggest if anyone is interested in starting their own small business, court repaving and striping would be something that has very few competitors. We have bid this out twice now on BidNet Direct, which is the government site where we put where we advertise our bid opportunities. The first bid went on, there was no response. The second time we received a bid from one company named Goddard Coatings in Pontiac, Michigan. The tennis courts need to be repaired, repainted, and restriped, and the basketball court needs to be restriped. Goddard has done previous work for the village, and we've been satisfied with their work to date. So I would like to suggest a motion.
Please, let it be a resolution, by the way.
Okay, let it be resolved to authorize administration to enter into agreement with Goddard Coatings Company from Pontiac, Michigan to repair, repaint, and restripe 2 tennis courts and restripe the basketball court at Beverly Park in an amount not to exceed $19,750. Funds are available in account number 101-900-985.
This resolution, is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Delaney. Discussion from council. Hearing none. Discussion from the audience. Hearing none. There's been a resolution that's been supported. Ms. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Mooney.
Yes.
Mr. Mueller.
Yes.
Mr. Nunez.
Yes.
Mr. Abud.
Yes.
Mr. Delaney.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the last item, which is 12, which has been added. And I would entertain a resolution to instruct the village administration to enter into an intergovernmental contract for the potable water services and collection of delinquent water accounts between the Village of Beverly Hills and the city of Southfield. Is there such a resolution?
Be it so resolved.
Thank you. Is there support?
Support.
All right. My discussion on this is, here's what happens. We give water to some people that live in the city of Southfield, their residents. Our water lines feed them. When they don't pay us, we've got to get Southfield to collect the money or add it to their taxes. Am I getting that right, Mr. Wilson?
That is correct.
Excuse me. This intergovernmental contract is in fact available at the village offices, but it's essentially saying that we're going to hire, or that Southfield's going to collect this for us by adding it to taxes, correct?
That is correct.
Right. Further questions for the manager or for anyone else with regard to this? From council, from my right, from my left, from the audience? Hearing none, there's been a resolution that's been supported. Ms. Lyons, call the roll.
Mr. Mueller.
Yes.
Mr. Nunez.
Yes.
Mr. Abud.
Yes.
Mr. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Mooney.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. That concludes our business agenda. We'll move on to public comments. Would anybody in the audience like to be heard? Hearing none, we're going to move on to manager's report. Mr. Wilson, briefly.
Thank you, President Mooney. I think as council is aware, we had some very high winds during the afternoon of Friday, May the 4th. We had multiple downed trees, power outages in various areas, some that lasted for multiple days. We did have a down power line that caused a fire on a detached garage. That was on Beechwood. Public Safety Department was able to get down, and the garage was heavily damaged in the fire and was a loss, but they were able to contain the fire to that location, and there were no injuries or no other loss of property. We did have a problem with a large branch that was laying on some electrical wires for multiple days around the area of Beechwood and Bates. It's not something we were able to take down, nor could our contractor because of the electrical line issue. It did take DT a few days, but finally on the afternoon of Wednesday, May the 9th, they did come in and review that. So I have asked to follow up with DT. I know they were quite busy during that week with a lot of restorations. We were concerned about the amount of time that branch, there was a large branch that was in the wires there. We did have some damage to our phone network that occurred on the afternoon of the 4th, which we found out when we came back on Monday the 7th. The phones didn't work for half the day. We had to get a contractor to come in and replace a board that was damaged due to the power surge. So we apologize for any inconveniences. I know if anybody called Monday morning, you probably got a line saying that we were disconnected. Not entirely. We did have that working by the afternoon, and I apologize if anybody wasn't able to get in touch with us that afternoon. We did get that resolved. The new village website was launched and working as of today. Mrs. Marshall has put the homepage of that up for you to see. I have also checked out the mobile version, which we do have working now, and also an app which you can load to your phone as well. So those are all working as of today. I've been told the web streaming was working today fine through the website. So I encourage everybody, if you have a chance, to take a look at the new website. Maybe offer any suggestions if you have them, but it is working well. Administration, minus myself, has got a very good handle on how to operate and modify the website. So I thank them for their efforts. A couple of things that just weren't in my report. Later on, probably later this week, I think council's aware we've been working with HRC on the road analysis, the PACER analysis that council approved a few months ago. We should have that wrapped up and done and have a presentation to council. That maybe there's probably their second meeting in June. Residents may notice there's been a lot of work that's gone on to this on paper today, but actually later this week and the next week you may notice vehicles on the roads in your neighborhoods. Those vehicles are with HRC. There might be some slow moving traffic through your neighborhood. And maybe see people working, the car should be clearly marked. So if you see that, if you have any questions, feel free to call, but just as a heads up, they will be going through your neighborhood later this week and into next week. And a quick other note on that, as the village did apply for SIMCOG does make money available to local communities for these PACER analysis. We did apply for a grant, and I got word late last week that was approved.
Excellent.
So we did get $5,050 from SIMCOG, so we'll be able to put those funds toward the cost of this road analysis, which will work out well. Before we meet again, village offices are going to be closed on Monday, May 28th, and obviously in observance of Memorial Day. So that's all I had for my report. Are there
questions or issues with the administration from my right, from my left? I have one item. I've indicated this to the two councilmen who are involved. If their photographs are not on the website, I will send you a photograph. A photograph for each of them. It may not look like them, but I will have that posted, right? Let's put it this way. Does the term bozo mean anything to anyone? In the event that they are not by Labor Day, photographs up there, they needn't bother. I'll take care of it. Anything else?
Certainly will.
Let's move on to council comments. Mr. Nunez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's a great time to be in the village now. I really, I got on my bike and I went to the ice cream place and drove through the village, and it's beautiful. The trees are popping, the lawn's green, people are happy. That's part of spring. But I also think that we're addressing a lot of good things here. I know there's a lot of conversations about drainage, about lot size. The term Bigfoot houses keep coming up. But I think we're advancing a lot of good things, and we're giving all of these things good, considerable thought. And we may not be moving quickly to some people, but we are moving in a positive direction, in my opinion. I've been having dialogue with some of my constituents, that you might say, on the east side, regarding the Parks millage, and I'm getting all positive feedback. So I'm somewhat excited about that. So that's all my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. Just a couple of things. Everyone mark your calendar. Well, you don't have to mark it. It's already on your calendar, Memorial Day. The parade this year starts around 11 o'clock. It should be absolutely wonderful, as always. It'll be followed by a commemorative service ceremony at 1 o'clock at the Village Park, and that will be presided over by our very own Mr. Aboud. Thank you very much, sir, for doing that. So come one, come all. Let's hope for great weather that day. I'll add my thanks to village administration for the website. Building and launching a website is no easy task. There are design, graphics decisions, copy decisions, what's going to link to what decision, what's going to be categorized into what area. And that's kind of the easy part. Then it's the training on how you actually are going to be able to use the website and where administration can actually edit and add and, add pictures and whatnot. So lots and lots of hours put into the website. I think it looks fantastic. I got a chance to play around with it a little bit today, and I could actually find everything I was looking for. So it's superb. Thank you so much.
2 photographs.
2 photographs. There is always going to be a couple of things when you launch a new site, so let's see. I'm sure it's coming. I'm going to just add one remaining comment, just to put a note. In terms of the Village of Beverly Hills granting permits based on our current ordinances, I am concerned to some degree that we do not consider or even mention that applicants should check with their local homeowners associations. I realize there's 15, 16 different associations out there with bylaws. I think it can pose a potential issue if we are to approve something, the homeowner then enacts or does it, and it's against homeowner association bylaws, and it puts the homeowner association and the person who did it in a bad position. I think it is something that should be discussed. It's something that I think we need to at least make note of as permits are granted, but that's just my thoughts. We can discuss it later on. Thank you.
I have a question. Who's the Grand Marshal of the parade?
Norman Rubin, yes.
Thank you. I thought it was Norm Rubin, but I just wanted to mention. All right. Mr. Aboud.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, first of all, I just wanted to give my sincere apologies for not making the last meeting, but again, as a courtesy to the rest of the members, I didn't want to bring the flu virus here, so all is well. I'm back. ZBA, they will be holding, and I'm not sure if there's a case or not.
The meeting was canceled for
Okay. So the Planning Commission Subcommittee has a semifinal draft of the fence ordinance, and it's been currently reviewed by the commission, and then once they're done reviewing it, we'll be able to share that with council. And there's several other subcommittees. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I asked for a report, and hopefully I'll get a report on the status of all those subcommittees that are working on the various things that everybody's been talking about. Speaking of the Southeast Michigan Council of Government, there's a regional clearing.
Who was speaking at the Southeast Council of Government?
He was getting money. All right. Oh, these are my comments, so yeah. So anyhow, the RC2, the Regional Clearinghouse, is holding their meeting to award and co-fund cities, villages, and townships of monies that are out there. And as a registered, or excuse me, as a delegate and a voting delegate, I will attend that RC2 meeting at the downtown SEMCOG office on June 12th, 2018. At the pleasure of the president and request from village manager, I did attend the SOCMA meeting, and their guest was the managing director for the Road Commission of Oakland County. And there's just I'm not going to go through the whole presentation, but I found these to be kind of a fun facts, that they're separate from the county general government. They have 415 employees, which is less than the employees they had back in 1960. They have a $147 million budget for this fiscal year 2018. They're the largest county road system in the state of 2,700 plus miles of roads. And then there's nearly 760 miles that are still gravel roads that they oversee. And here's what the RCOC, or the Road Commission of Oakland County maintains: 230 miles of state highways, 95% of all the traffic signals, and 150,000 road signs. So you wonder, it's like, okay, everybody talks about, potholes. These people are pretty spread thin, but the state is not really giving them any kind of funding, and it comes right back to this fiscal and responsible council here that understands that they're not going to sit and wait for the county to give us money for our roads. I think we're doing a great job maintaining them. And then finally, I am honored to be presiding and taking part in the parade. Thank you for everybody that will be coming out. More important, looking forward and seeing all the residents that come out and enjoy that day. It's just a wonderful time, and obviously they're there to honor and remember the people who serve to protect us and give us what we have today, what we call America and our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Abu. Councilman Delaney.
Thank you, President Mooney. Again, I want to thank the administration for the work that was done on this budget. I think it was really terrific for everybody that worked on it, and thank you very much. We have had more power outages in this village. This seems to be coming with frequency. And it also seems, I could be wrong on this, that some of the same lines are involved. This will get to, it is at the point where it's not acceptable. I don't think that DET is doing their job, and we were told 3 years ago they'd be through the village to trim trees, and they haven't come. We don't know when they're going to come. I think this is a much bigger issue than just Beverly Hills, and I think we need to make our thoughts known to the Public Service Commission and also to some other communities. Maybe this is, I suspect this problem goes far beyond Beverly Hills. Every time we get a storm, we have a lot of power outages. And I know that we've probably all been through those, but quite frankly, it's no fun. And I'd like to see something done about this. I don't think DTE is putting money into their infrastructure. And I want to know why. I mean, if you go in the backyards and you look at these lines, they're a mess. They're an absolute mess. Of course the lines are going to come down in storms. And I really think we need to look into this. Also part of that problem are the trees. And when we start talking about infrastructure and borrowing, I think something that needs to be remembered is we have a tree problem in this village, and I mean old trees, and some of which are in trouble, and they need to be taken down, and they need to be replaced. I absolutely love trees, and I want them replaced, but we need to get moving on this. And some of these trees, if you just look at it, particularly riding through West Beverly, but I know East Beverly is the same way. I mean, you wonder how some of these trees are still standing. So we need to think about that. I've complained about this before, and it seems to be getting worse. I know that the new gas station on the corner of Southfield and 13 in the city of Southfield, the pace appears to have picked up, and that will open someday. I think it is none too soon for Beverly Hills people, because the station that we've got is literally, in my opinion, falling apart. It's a disgrace. Beverly Hills, as I said at a planning board meeting several months ago, Beverly Hills deserves more than this, and we're just not getting it. And they came before the planning board and they asked for approval to begin renovations. And I could be wrong, but I don't think we've heard another word from them. I'm not sure that we can take anything they say as gospel. I just mentioned that. It's, and I go in there. I mean, you don't have much of a choice. But it's not good. I want to thank Bob Borgen. We appointed him a second liaison to the next, before next, and he was able to attend a almost 2-hour meeting today for us, and he's already given me a report. And I thank Bob for his help with next. And President Mooney, that's it for me tonight.
Thank you. Although it's late, I need to touch on a few things, and I'll do it as quickly as I can. I personally didn't expect anything but the level of competence that I saw in the presentation of the budget. I don't think there's any need to thank you for that. I think you did your job, and that's well done. There is a need to thank you, Mr. Wilson and Ms. McCarthy and Chief Taranjo, and in fact your whole staff, for what's gone on over the last 8 years, because I think what we saw demonstrated tonight was an insight into what is needed into the future. And I spoke, I think, at the last meeting about, or at one of these meetings, about what the vision for this community should be. The fiscal responsibility that you, Mr. Wilson, your staff, Ms. McCarthy, and going back to Bob Wizawati and others, there was always balanced budgets. There was always thought for the future, but it's been remarkable what's happened over the last 8 years. It's been an effort that really has made this community as fiscally sound as any can be, that provides the level of services that we do. So congratulations, not so much for doing your job in presenting the budget, but in maybe the bigger picture, seeing the bigger picture. It's important. And it's critical long-term. So thanks for that. I don't leave the council out of that. We've had some good members of council and council with vision since 2010, and maybe even from 2008, possibly with the exception of the guy sitting in the center seat tonight. But people with a vision of what this community should be, that we have top-notch equipment, that we have top-notch public safety people, that we have an extremely good meeting place, that we have a working area that is conducive to work, not some cobbled together office building that was built in the 70s. So there have been steps taken that I think see what this community is, what it will be, and perhaps, and I'm not minimizing the concerns that were raised tonight, but maybe a community where people want to build $800,000 houses. That's the kind of community that we have slowly been becoming. And I, for one, do not think that that is a bad thing. All right, that said, I want to thank especially Councilman Aboud for all the times that he stepped up and has appeared on our behalf at these meetings that are difficult for many of us to attend, where he has been representing the community and our community not only well, but superbly, even getting praise from those organizations and those those groups that have some influence on what's going on both in Lansing and Pontiac and perhaps even in Washington. He has been an outstanding representative for our community, and I appreciate the many times that you stepped in for me, and keep up the good work. That said, we're going to have a Michigan Municipal League convention on September 20th through the 22nd. It would not hurt for some of us to attend that, and I would like you to, if you haven't received this notification, to at least give some consideration to going. It's a lot of work. It's my understanding that I might be barred from Grand Rapids, and especially the DeVos place, for various reasons, most of which are political. But however that may turn out, I may even try to go to that. All right, lastly, we have a community service scholarship sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Greening, and actually sponsored by Pat Greening and named for her late husband, Donald Greening. It's the Donald and Patricia Greening Community Service Scholarship, which is awarded yearly to one male and one female graduating senior who is committed to this community and done some outstanding community service. We got 6 applicants. And I think Mr. Wilson and I sat on the team that, or the panel that decided who would get this. And I think you would agree with me, would you not, Mr. Wilson, that it was as close a 6-way tie as it could possibly be.
I would agree.
If you ever want to think that our young people aren't doing as much for their community, for their fellow students, for their charities, for their churches, for kids who can't read, to making sure that people have an ability to enjoy themselves in the park, building safe benches for kids who are being bullied. It's remarkable what we saw. And it was a very, very difficult choice. But for purposes of this evening, I would like to congratulate Ms. Hadley Moak and Mr. Charles Ringy. And Hadley and Chaz, I could not be any prouder of anybody who lives in this village than the two of you. We congratulate you, and you'll receive a letter from the village president, and you also receive the convocation, receive the scholarship at a convocation. And I can't think of anybody, if there's a volunteer who would like to give out those scholarships at that convocation, we'll find somebody to do that from the council. So, that said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. We are adjourned.